So there are lots of people out there struggling to be seen as a leader in their organization or in organizations that they are applying for. But they have no supervisory experience, no formalized supervisory experience anyway, right? Michael here, boy wonder of career coaching. And I'm here to talk to you about 7 leadership skills you can highlight right now on your resume and during interviews without any management experience. So, first, I want you to remember smash that like button, give us that thumbs up, please, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon because you will know every time that we go live. As we begin, I do want to say that there is a big difference between a manager, supervisor, and a leader. So picture this. You walk into a room where something really difficult has happened and watch every person's face and watch where they look. The person that they look at, that's the leader. And that may not always be the person that got hired to do the job of manager. Um, Chances are you've been that person. I know I had been that person before I got given a supervisor position. So let's break down some of those skills that you probably already have, that you're probably already exhibiting in your job. And let's talk about how you can talk about those. I've broken the 7 skills into 2 parts just to make it a little bit easier. The first section that we're going to focus on is a little bit more operational or transactional. So these are kind of the doer skills. And the second set of skills are a little bit more interpersonal or emotional. And to be honest with you, I think the second half of skills are probably the most important ones because those skills are the ones that are really needed in order to have the right temperament to be a leader. So, first, as we go into some of those operational skills, I want to talk about adaptability. So, whenever you are in charge and um, you have to wear a lot of hats, leaders wear a lot of hats. So, processes change. Some of those processes change by your design, some of them change by committee, and some of them change because leadership on high says that they need to. There are directives. And as a leader, especially as you come in early on in your career, likely you're in middle management. So you've got folks on the front lines who have a certain set of issues, and they often are reporting to you. And then you also have your leadership who, they have something that they need as well. And you kind of have to be that person for everyone. And you have to be adaptable. So a leader has to know that they don't always know what's coming around the corner. Now, there's a good chance that you already are that and that you are exemplifying that in your day to day work life. So you can show that you're adaptable in a couple of different ways. On your resume, really talking about specific periods of change. So if there was a program that changed while you were in your tenure, talk about that change and how you adapted and what benefit you brought during that change. In an interview, that's much more simple because it's conversational. You can talk about being an adaptable person and give an example. But adaptability is really key. And I think it's one of those skills that many of us have and that we are not showcasing enough. Okay, so the second of those skills is a willingness to improve processes. So note I said willingness. Now, this speaks to 2 things that I think are important. Thing number 1 is that you can improve processes, right? And a lot of people can. That's still good. It means that you're able to make improvements. But that second piece is the piece that I think gets lost in translation sometimes. You're willing to come up with new ideas or to implement ideas that came up with by others. So the willingness piece is super important. A lot of people will tell you that when you are selected for a job, it's for 3 criteria. And people don't really know this. And I think even people who are selecting folks for jobs don't know this. But it's, can they do the job? Will they do the job? And are they a good fit? That willingness piece is really important and gets lost in translation because their smartest person in the room may also be super lazy, and they may not be really willing to put in the effort to make the change a reality. So you can relate that you're able to do this by listing some processes that you've improved on your resume and what impacts that they had on the organization. Now, for those of you guys who've been around for a while and have watched some of the videos and have kind of followed our content, you'll know that we talk a lot about responsibility and impact. So the responsibility was a process that you improved, and the impact is how it fundamentally changed or benefited an agency, department, or organization. Now, the reason why that's important is because everything that you do at a new job likely will change. So your responsibilities change every time you take a new job, but that impact remains the same. That impact means that you did a thing that fundamentally changed an organization, which means that a new organization can see themselves when they look at your resume and think they can fundamentally change our organization. So on the resume, talk about the thing that you did and the impact. In your interview, again, it's a good time to sort of lean into talking about the mindset that you had during process improvement, how you went about it, what you were thinking as you were doing it, what sorts of things that you did for others if it was a tough time. So lean into that mindset piece because they already have an idea of your ability. Now give them a sense of what you can do for them and what the way that you feel as you're doing that. So a third, and it goes along with that, is a track record of leading. So even informally leading projects, process improvements, programs, etc. So you may not have formally led a unit, so you may not have your first supervisory role yet, but you've likely led a project or a group or a team informally. So they may not have assigned roles, but you fell into that leader category. You may have been in charge of some sort of informalized projects. And when I say informalized projects, I really mean not project management related projects. You've been given a task, basically, throughout your career, right? You may have had plenty of those. I know I have. Talk about those times. So resume, interview, whatever, talk about those times. Talk about the projects. They relate one-to-one to a formalized project. Informal and formal are very similar. What I want you to do is speak to your methodology. Now, what that's going to mean is that if you don't already know project management terminology, this is a really good time to hop on LinkedIn Learning, do an intro to project management course, start learning about ideation and all of these different pieces of project management, and speak to the methodology, even if it was informal while you were doing it. That'll show that you understand the techniques at play, even if you didn't know them at the time when you did them, right? So that just gives you a place to sort of to speak from experience. So that's all on the operational side. Before we move on to the emotional side, I do want to take a quick second to just thank those of you who have been here watching our videos, who have interacted with me on LinkedIn. There's there's a lot of great content there. Definitely, if you've not connected already, do so. A lot of the ideas that I get for these videos comes directly from comments on LinkedIn and things that we've done. And if you have not already gotten some of our free resources, go to sendittosuccess.com/resources because we've got great resources. Anytime that you're watching this, they may have been refreshed. Right now, we've got a great one on resumes and the mistakes that you could be making. And also, if you're a teacher, we've got something on leaving the classroom. So definitely check out sendittosuccess.com/resources. And with that being said, let's move on to the last section, which is our emotional or interpersonal skills that you can highlight on your resume and during your interviews to show that your leadership potential. So the first of these, and I think that it's probably the one that comes up as most obvious, or at least it's the buzzword that is I think around a lot right now. And that's emotional intelligence or effective listening skills. These are slightly different, but I'm going to group them together because it's my video and I can. You will know how important it is to have effective listening skills and emotional intelligence the first time that an employee is crying their eyes out in your office. You will know that it's super important when you have to discipline someone for the first time, and you have to hear them out, and you have to have that empathy and compassion. So it's incredibly important for the modern leader. Gone are the days of the impassive brick wall that sat behind a desk. Modern leaders are working in a modern workforce, and that modern workforce demands a leader that's compassionate. And if you don't already have those skills, if they don't already come naturally to you, start reading about emotional intelligence or EQ. That's a thing, that's a way that people talk about. Raise that EQ level because it is incredibly important that you are able to both maintain the right level of professional distance so that you can effectively lead while also empathizing with your staff and empathizing with the people that you work with so that you can ensure that they have a healthy workplace and that you're not taking a bunch of this home at night. So, the second piece that I will talk about in terms of interpersonal skills is a servant first mindset. So, servant leadership comes pretty naturally, I would say, to most of the folks who are in my orbit, who are hanging around, who I'm connected with on LinkedIn, because a lot of the folks that I talk to on a day to day basis are in education, social services, nonprofit, the medical profession. So you've already decided, for the most part, to give up on that big bag and start working with people because you truly believe in helping people and in being a servant first leaders. This concept is nothing new, but I do think that it's a concept that more leaders need to buy into and need to start really truly thinking about. But real leaders serve first. Real leaders take the opportunity to lead because it allows them to serve. And ways that you can show that you are already a servant first person is that you have a commitment to customer service. You have a commitment to employee engagement and employee development. And you can really talk about those things on your resume. And as a former teacher, for example, if you're in that camp, you understand development like no other. You understand servant first. Most of you probably do, right? And so start really leading with that servant first mentality. So the penultimate, next to the last, conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is one of those things that you will use all the time as a new manager. And so being able to show hiring managers and recruiters that you really understand the conflict resolution space is incredibly important. It will make a lot of your job a lot easier, and you will likely and have already likely been asked questions on interviews about tell me about a time you've dealt with a conflict at work. Right? That is a very common question. I've asked it myself in an interview, and I know a lot of interviewers are still asking it. So let me give you the answer to that question. Most questions don't have an answer. Most questions are asked in such a way that it allows you to show what your chain of thought is, what your train of thought is. Chain of thought's a strange thing to say, but it's so that you can show kind of your methodology and where you're coming from, and if you're a good fit. I will tell you that conflict resolution specialists will tell you that there is an answer to this question, and that answer is that conflict should be dealt with at the lowest level possible. Meaning, if you have a conflict with a peer level employee, peer level coworker, if you can squash that conflict with them at the time without involving anyone else, that's the lowest level. Now, I will tell you that that's not always possible. There are threats of violence. Some conflicts are deal with impropriety or sexual misconduct, and with those, you need to really, not really try to get involved in that. But the general consensus is that if you can squash something at the same level, squash it. If that conflict is with your boss and you don't feel like you have job security enough to squash that conflict, you may have to go to their boss, right? So it's looking at where that lowest level is and where you can start. So when you ever you get asked a question about conflict, that's the area that you should really lean into. And feel free. This is not the 5 hour long conflict resolution class that I've been involved in, but I can sum it all down to 20 seconds. That's kind of where you need to go. So that being said, I do want you to now think about that. So now you have a good basis for an answer to that question, but you now need to be able to practice what you preach. Because if you do get that job, how are you going to handle the conflict in your area? So if you do steal that answer, I want you to then put in the thought to be able to use that going forward. So the final piece is your ability to work in a group, understand group dynamics, and what your role in a group typically is. So introverts and extroverts really need to understand group dynamics for different reasons. Extroverts like myself may be a little bit of a chatty Cathy, may talk all over people, may derail groups from time to time, guilty as charged. And introverts might tend to, especially high performing introverts, might tend to just secretly do all of the work so that they don't have to deal with people like me. As a leader, you really have to understand group dynamics and kind of move past that and learn how to have a highly functioning team. So if you already are at a place where you feel like you understand group dynamics and you understand group thought and you have worked in groups very successfully, talk about that on your resume. Talk about groups that you've led, talk about groups that you've worked with, talk about groups that you've fundamentally changed in some way. And the same in your interviews, right? So being able to really show that you have what it takes in a group will help people understand that you have what it takes to lead a group. So that's all for this week. Please, please, please like the video, subscribe. It helps the channel be seen by others. And right now, if you're still here, we are really trying to grow our content because we know that our content can help. So if you've watched this and you've liked it, don't be afraid to share this on social media. Send it out far and wide. We want to be able to help as many people as possible. So thank you so much for being here. We hope that what we're doing can help you find a meaningful career, help you develop yourself in your career. And yeah, thank you so much. Like the video. Do it. Do it. Like the video.